No pride for some of us without liberation for all of us. Hello. So it is me, Lady P, and I am back. So I hope that we've had a lot of time to go ahead and take in the last conversation that we had on my page, which was the last video about blackness not being professional and the concept of professionalism and the inherent racism that goes into that concept. We're going to be talking about 5 black queer icons that you should just know about. So the reason why I'm making this video is because typically during Black History Month, we only go over 2 things. That's Martin Luther King and slavery. Like the bare minimum things in Black History Month. We do it in education and we do it corporation wise, business wise. People only talk about those 2 things, and there's so much more to Black history, and Black people exist in every aspect of life. Quite literally, no movement will be successful without the support of Black queer individuals. Pro-Black liberation would not have happened. LGBTQ rights would not have happened. None of these things would be taking place without the support of Black queer people. So I am making a conscious effort to actually highlight and uplift us during this month as well. And some of you are really going to gag because these people actually inspired your faves. So let's go ahead and get into it. So we're going to try and do things in chronological order, although some of these people do kind of like overlap, even though one may be older than the others. Somebody had an impact before the others. So, there is some things right there, but we're going to try and do it as chronologically as possible. So the first person on the list is going to be Benjamin Banneker. Now, who is Benjamin Banneker? So growing up, Benjamin Banneker was an anomaly. People already knew that he was a genius. He was very, very smart. Although the odds were against him, he definitely did have to fight to beat those odds. But I do want to also mention that while he had to fight these odds, he did as well benefit from colorism. This was a light-skinned man born to 2 biracial people, and he was able to be perceived as more palatable for white people. That is why Thomas Jefferson would then hire him to create Washington, D.C. So he ended up creating the entire map for the city. So U Street, First Street, all that is Benjamin Banneker. And that's why he has a school named after him in DC. So Benjamin got all of this notoriety and got to go to Washington, DC because he did a crazy thing in his 20s, and that was create a watch out of wood that kept perfect time. And he did so just by studying pocket watches. He did not invent the watch. He did, however, show his genius by being able to replicate a watch using nothing but wood. And that got him to go to Washington, D.C. And it's like, if you can do that, what else can you do, right? So he was considered like a wonder of the world. While he was working on these government contracts for Thomas Jefferson, he saw how his other Black peers were being underpaid, undervalued. And then he also saw how Thomas Jefferson owned a bunch of slaves. And him and Thomas Jefferson actually got into a beef. Girl, you would never believe it. You would never believe it. Just imagine being in the 1700s. And in order to read somebody, you gotta send it in a letter. It is gotta go out to them, and it'll go in the paper, and everybody can read it. Everybody can see the things. It was crazy. A beef of his time, truly. He went, you know what, Thomas Jefferson, do you need that? Because I find it to be kind of crazy that since you got into it with the British about your equality, now you want to start enslaving people and doing unto them what you say that the British did unto you. Oh, he really gagged them. He really had the girl gag. No shade. Get her, Benjamin. Get her for them. Get her for me. Get them for the ancestors. I want us to really keep that in mind as to how closely we are tied to our ancestors, how closely we are tied to slavery and to the things that we say that we're so far removed from. Now, why does this queer identity matter in this conversation? It's because we don't know it. During that time frame, the 1700s, is very necessary for you to have a wife and to reproduce whether you want to or not. However, he didn't, and he was an alcoholic at home, as well with the fact that after he died, right after his funeral, his house was burned the same day, and most of his writings were gone with it. So he had like personal writings about the race, and writings about everything else, but only some of them were left. So that is why people were assuming that this was also a gay man. but that cannot be proven nor denied. I personally do think that there was some queerness in the room just because of the facts of him struggling with his sense of self and his identity as a whole. James Baldwin would call it disidentification. That is why I put him on this list. The next person on our list is going to be Alan Locke. So Alan Locke holds a very close place in my heart because I went to Howard University and my first English class was in the Locke building. So that was very, very important to me. Alan Locke is most notable for his piece, The New Negro, where he analyzes different bodies of work and different pieces and the experiences of Black people. So that way he can give an in-depth analysis of the difference between Black people immediately after the Civil War, as well as Black people now. He was also the founder of the Harlem Renaissance. He started that entire wave with that piece, might I add. So he is the reason why we have Billie Holiday, Cab Calloway. The Harlem Renaissance was a time for Black people, for Black art. That was when we started really being able to start performing and entertaining and doing things like that. Although racism was still at large, we had to enter the club through the back, and we had to go through that back door. We could not exit through the front door. We could not eat or drink at the places that we were performing at. However, we had to get a coin some type of way. Entertaining was that way. That was something that he meant to really get out to us, to really inspire people to start getting out there, producing, creating, those types of things. Alan Locke was responsible for that. He was the embodiment of pro-Blackness, and he was the embodiment of queer liberation. This is important because I wanted to understand that pro-Blackness, and when I'm talking about in Black history, I'm not just speaking about Black history in America. I'm speaking about Black history across the world and how we impact things across the world. So he also wanted these Black people that he was uplifting during this time, these Black people in America, to utilize different African inspiration, West African inspiration, for their art, because we come from those people. That is how we got here, through the exploitation of West African people. Without that heritage, without that lineage, we would not be who we are today. So it was important for us to make sure that we take that along the way with us, and we engage in that cultural pluralism, so that way we can continue to create. Next on the list is going to be Bayard Rustin. Bayard Rustin is honestly one of the easiest people for me to talk about because I can talk about him all day long. He was the first person that I learned about when I started to do this research like a few years ago, and he's just so forgotten about in history, and it's very, very frustrating to see a Black queer person who was so important to our liberation, who, although not open about his sexuality, was criminalized for it. Bayard Rustin was a Black gay man from Pennsylvania who ended up moving to New York. Bayard Rustin was an advisor for Martin Luther King. This was his biggest contribution to Black civil rights and the civil rights movement. He taught Martin Luther King how to peacefully protest. I want us to remember that. He taught Martin Luther King how to peacefully protest, and he also organized the March on Washington. Without Bayard Rustin, there is no I Have a Dream speech. There is no peacefully protesting at these diners, and there is no march on all these places. Those things were just not happening. Okay, this was Bayard Rustin. Although his queerness did not play a role specifically into how he wanted to be an activist for a long time, he was still criminalized for it. And if the role that it played was the fact that it put him at a risk of not being able to finish organizing this March on Washington. He was seen in a car with a white man, and the police assumed that because he was in the car with this white man, that they had to be engaging in some sort of exchange and sexual encounter and whatnot. Not prostitution, but the white man left. Bayard Rustin was criminalized, and it was plastered all over the place. This is because it was illegal for gay people to have sex in their own home, might I add, because of sodomy laws that plagued during the 1950s in every single state. So just the assumption that something gay is happening will get you criminalized. Gay people gathering in big places will get you criminalized because they assume that you are doing heinous acts of gay sex. Because, mind you, he was a civil rights activist. So what better way to make Black people not look civil than to highlight a Black person that did in fact do something or was convicted of a crime or whatever. He did end up having no choice but to be open because it was plastered everywhere after that. After he was charged with that act of sexual deviancy, and he ended up having to marry a white man. Did marry that white man, fortunately, then died in 1987. So that is a story of Bed Rustin. And I do not want us to all go and watch Rustin. That is a good movie. However, that is not entirely historically accurate. They dramatize it a lot for the views, but it is not how that entire story of the organization of the March on Washington went. So please do not watch that movie for historical accuracy. So next on our list is Marsha P. Johnson. And I know that most of you who are watching this probably already know who she is. However, I don't think y'all really know what she really got down with. So Marsha P. Johnson is constantly mentioned in the talk about pride and the liberation of queer people, but she is constantly misrepresented, and I think that's because it is a dark-skinned black woman. I'm just gonna put it out there, that is what it is. So Marsha P. Johnson understood the intersections of being black and being LGBTQ plus a lot. She understood that very much so clearly, and that played a role into every single thing that she did. Every single thing that she did was for the black queers, was for the people of color, LGBTQs. That is what she did. Okay, each and every time, and she ate it up for me each and every time. Stonewall was not a riot. Stonewall was a raid, and I really want us to change how we discuss that. So how Stonewall took place. Marsha was getting ready to go with her girls. She ended up not being with them. She was walking out at night, and she heard a bunch of commotion at the Stonewall Inn, which is a place that people gathered on up at. It was like, a place to be at night. Because queerness was criminalized, like I just mentioned earlier in this video with Bed Rustin, they raided the Stonewall Inn plenty of times. They would often exploit these people financially, get whatever kind of money that they could out of the gay people in the room. Those kinds of things they targeted us for. And they assumed that we were doing heinous, nefarious acts in the Stonewall Inn. Marsha hears the raid because they're fighting back at this raid. And Marsha grabs a brick. She pulls up, grabs a brick, and hits an officer outside the head with it. They were already fighting. It was already going on. It was late as hell at night, and she hopped in this fight and got to business. She ended up going to jail, ultimately, and she got out, and they ended up doing prides afterwards. The first pride after that raid that night, she had to advocate for black queer people because the white LGBTQ plus people were separating themselves from the black queer people at this pride. One of her very much so remembered phrases is "no pride for some of us without liberation for all of us." And I really want us to keep in mind how important it is to remember that, because when we talk about LGBTQ plus liberation, we constantly put white people at the forefront. Whenever we talk about how trans people are being unalive, we have to emphasize that it is in fact black trans people, or else you get the idea that it's white people out here that are facing this heightened amounts of violence, and it's not. It's not the case. Now, not to say that white trans people don't experience anything. However, they're not experiencing that extreme heightened rate of violence that like black trans women are, because that's just not the case. Our race plays a role in that. And when we talk about like the unalivement of gay men, same thing. Black gay men are unalive, and nobody cares. Nobody hears about it, right? And when we talk about the AIDS epidemic, white people were the face of that. So even outside of that, Marsha P. Johnson did a lot. She also founded the STAR organization, which was a group to rehouse, to provide access to opportunities for unhoused LGBTQ plus people of color. Her and Sylvia started that together, and it was a very big thing in the community. People recognized her. People called her Saint Marsha. She would pray at the altar, like facing towards the street, because in DC, which is where she was from, they have like altars, but they have them outside. If that makes sense. So they have the altars outside, and you can like just pray at them. But she would like pray towards everybody else because she was for the people. So I know by now you may be thinking, well, Lady P, what is going on around here? This is a whole lot of information. Yes. It's a lot of information. The things I'm talking about, when I was learning about it, it was so triggering. These are not even all the people that I learned, but I just don't want this video to be too long. But I have learned so much about so many people doing my research about Black queer history. And it is so important that we know our stories, so important that we are aware of the things that the people before us and the people who are living with us had to do to get us to where we are today. And it is gut wrenching to see all of that be overthrown and overshadowed because a white man got into office. This white man, Donald Trump, took his white ass into office and then claimed that DEI is racist to white people and sexist to white men. This is delusional at its best, and I really want us to keep in mind the fact that everything that we fought for, everything that we worked for, the things that we've had, were that they can in fact be taken from us like that. And it is easy to do so. And it's easy to defy the law, and it's easy for him to break it and to do whatever the fuck he wants to do. And when you create a space that disenfranchises so many people, we are the ones who have to keep our history alive. When they don't want to recognize Black History Month officially, we had to do it ourselves, and we had to platform ourselves and tell our own stories. We've been telling our own stories. This is nothing new. It may be tiring, but we'll get tired, and then we'll go to sleep, and we'll wake up and we'll do it again because we had no choice but to do so. And if we don't do it, who will? Nobody's going to care about you more than you care about yourself. And think about that societally. Nobody will care about us more than we care about ourselves. It is what it is. So the last person on this list is going to be Phil Wilson. So Phil Wilson is I've never seen anybody talk about this man. However, this is a very, very important figure in the conversation of AIDS and the AIDS epidemic. So Phil Wilson is a Black gay man who founded the Black AIDS Institute. What this foundation did was provide resources and awareness of HIV and AIDS to the Black community, because although we were the ones who have always faced disproportionate amount of deaths due to AIDS, and we were the ones who were contracting it more than white people, they were the ones who were getting all of the resources, and they were the ones getting the medication, and they were the ones getting the health education, and they were the ones getting this stuff. So he primarily centers Blackness in his work with AIDS. However, he did serve and create multiple different foundations and organizations, which I will list here. He's still here today. Hello, Phil, if you watch this video. So a very other big thing that Phil did was advocate for the CDC to take this disease seriously, and they ended up creating the Act Against AIDS to then create a campaign to provide awareness and research towards a cure for AIDS and things of that nature. So that was a very, very big thing that he did. And I wanted to keep in mind that AIDS has always disproportionately impacted Black people, not because we are genetically more likely to get it, but because of proximity. That's with any sort of contractable disease or things like that. Like if my mom gets sick, I'm statistically more likely to get it than somebody that she meets at the grocery store, because she's in closer proximity to me than people at the grocery store. And it's the same thing to be said about Black people societally, because we are in closer proximity to other Black people. We are going to be more likely to contract something, and something's going to be more likely to be prevalent within our community than, say, other communities, especially those communities that have the resources to prevent other people within their community from getting said virus and then disease. So real need to recognize real, no shade. So I want us to understand that without Phil and without Bayard Rustin and without Marsha P. Johnson and without Benjamin Banneker and without Alan Locke, these people, this pro-Blackness would not exist. LGBTQ plus liberation would not exist. You will not have the people that you have today without the people who I just mentioned, because they are pivotal in understanding Black history, the culture of Black people, our struggles that we have to go through, how much we have to advocate for ourselves because there is nobody else to advocate for us. These are the things that I want us to recall. We are people, we are humans, we contribute to society. We are here just as much as anybody else. So whenever Black History Month comes up, do not forget Black queer people. Whenever Pride Month comes up, do not forget Black queer people. We are here. And outside of that, if there's nothing else, I do want to thank you all for watching this video, being a part of this movement and a part of this history, and liberating yourself as well as the rest of us. We are here to stay. But that is all. So make sure that y'all go ahead and subscribe to me using that button down below. Also, make sure that you follow me on all of my links. They will be linked down below. Also, make sure that you go ahead and watch my last video and be on the tune for my next video. Turn the notifications on. Do what you need to do. Watch the shorts. all that stuff. We here and we finna be here. That's it. That's all. Thank you.